One thing for sure, I can tell you who's not on Epstein's list. Nobody black, no immigrants, no trans. There's no diversity in this pedophile ring. No DEI. This is a game for rich, old white dudes. The largest demographic in America, the number one registered sex offenders in America, registered sex offenders, are middle-aged white dudes. This is their game. And if you let this stuff slide, you have a favorite pedophile. That's the game you're playing. I don't care who did what. I don't care if I like their music, their politics. I don't care if I like their movies. If you did this, to me, you're a pedophile and you should suffer the consequences of the law. Because unlike a lot of people, like Megyn Kelly, or like all of these people who are excusing this, I ain't got a favorite pedophile. That's not a game I'm willing to pay. That's going to be on Netflix soon. My favorite pedophile. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. The internet is on one right now. So I was reading where apparently, and I most certainly am not saying this is true. It's on the internet, so you have to take all of that with a grain of salt. But apparently, there is an email where Epstein's brother Mark asked him if Putin had pictures of the orange one blowing Bubba, which I assume would be Bill Clinton. And of course, I don't know if this is true or not. But let's be real. This dance that he does, he learned it from somewhere. I mean, that dance right there, that looks like a dick sucking warm up. I'm just this Friday is starting off spectacularly. You know, of course, it's internet fodder about supposedly Epstein's brother asking him did Putin have pictures of Donald Trump blowing Bubba. And what's interesting is they have made some of the worst allegations about people, internet fodder about everybody. Kamala slept her way to the top, and Barack's sexuality and Hillary's sexuality. And now that the tables have turned, they don't like it. They don't like when they're internet fodder. They don't like when people are making jokes at their expense. They don't like when their sexuality is questioned. But they've done it to everybody and had a good laugh, and everybody defended it. Oh, he's just trolling. And now it's your turn. Now it's your turn. You know what? Think of it as a 69.
Relationship for many years, but he also saw strength because I was president. So he dictated a couple of memos to himself. Give me a break. You're going to find out what did he know with respect to Bill Clinton, with respect to the head of Harvard, with respect to all of those people that he knew, including J.P. Morgan Chase. Yeah, Jennifer, go ahead. Go ahead.
In the file, Venezuela,
Quiet, Mickey. Jeffrey Epstein and I had a very bad relationship.
Okay, so this Trump-Epstein email scandal has gotten crazier and crazier, and the floodgates legitimately blew open last night. Yesterday morning, House Oversight Democrats released 3 emails they got from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, and even those 3 were wild, including Epstein calling Trump the dog that has and barks at a victim, who's reportedly Virginia Giuffre, saying she spent hours at his house with Trump. Epstein also wrote, of course he knew about the girls, as he escalated the abuse. Republicans immediately claimed the emails were selectively edited, out of context, all of that. But then came the twist. Republicans released the entire 23,000-document trove from Epstein's estate, and instead of clearing Trump, the full dump makes him look far, far worse. So let's break down the biggest revelations. First, Epstein was an absolutely terrible writer. Typos everywhere, grammar from another planet. But the content? Wild. Probably the biggest bombshell is an Epstein email from February 2019 where he directly refers to the sexual abuse of underage girls and writes, Trump knew of it and came to my house many times during that period. He never got a massage. That alone would rock the political world. But it keeps going. In 2015, Epstein emails a New York Times reporter asking, would you like photos of Donald and girls in bikinis in my kitchen? The reporter said yes, but says he never received any photos. Instead, Epstein sent an anecdote of Trump walking into a glass door because he was so focused on young girls swimming in the pool. And then there's the insults. Epstein called Trump evil beyond belief, mad, nuts, dopey Donald, demented Donald, borderline insane, and repeatedly said his finances were a complete sham. He trashed Trump to journalists, to Michael Wolff, to Larry Summers, calling Trump dumb, weak, volatile, and someone who would crack Stormy Daniels. At one point, he literally says, "Your world does not understand how dumb he really is." But there's more. Epstein spent years digging for dirt on Trump. He was asking associates to investigate Trump's finances as early as 2012, including the Mar-a-Lago mortgage and a mysterious $30 million loan. In 2019, one of Epstein's advisors combed through Trump's federal financial disclosure and emailed Epstein 9 interesting findings about his assets and businesses. Epstein was deeply invested in exposing Trump financially for reasons that still aren't fully clear. And then there's the question of their relationship. Trump has long said he cut ties with Epstein in 2004, but emails suggest Epstein spent Thanksgiving with the Trump crowd in 2016, and in 2017 he wrote that he was spending Thanksgiving with Faith Cates and David Faisal Hansen Trump. Now maybe that doesn't mean Donald Trump himself, but it also doesn't not mean that. It certainly doesn't match Trump's story of cutting all contact in 2004. There's also an absolutely insane email Epstein wrote in 2018, where someone tells him the attacks on him will blow over, and Epstein responds, "I am the one able to take him down," meaning Trump. He really believed he had the leverage to destroy him. And the international angle? Also wild. In a June 2018 exchange with a top European official, 1 month before Trump met Putin in Helsinki, Epstein suggested telling the Russian foreign minister to speak to people who had insight on Trump. Epstein claimed he himself had insight, writing, "It is not complex, must be seen to get something. It's that simple." Another email shows Epstein discussing Michael Cohen's hush money crimes with former White House counsel Catherine Ruemmler. Epstein writes, "I know how dirty Donald is. New York business people have no idea what it means to have your fixer flip." And those are just the Trump-related emails. The broader trove shows Epstein emailing Prince Andrew, Steve Bannon, Peter Thiel, Woody Allen's wife, foreign officials, billionaires. It's endless. But right now, the political world is zeroed in on the Trump revelations. Democrats say the emails are deeply concerning and reveal patterns that deserve real scrutiny. They also accuse Republicans of dumping 23,000 documents at once to bury the worst parts and prevent a day-by-day media drip-drip cycle. Republicans counter that Democrats are cherry-picking and that the focus on Trump is a distraction from everything else in the files. Trump, for his part, ran to Truth Social calling the entire thing an Epstein hoax and claiming Democrats are pushing it to distract from the government shutdown. But here's the kicker. If this is just a hoax, why is Trump scrambling behind the scenes to stop more Epstein files from being released? Multiple reports say top Trump allies met with Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace, urging them to remove their names from a discharge petition that would force a vote to release the Epstein files publicly. Both Boebert and Mace insist Trump didn't pressure them at all, and that they're simply tired of the media focusing on Trump instead of Epstein's victims. But the timing is suspicious, especially because Speaker Mike Johnson now says he will put the resolution to release the files on the House floor next week. Republicans Tim Burkett actually tried to fast-track the vote using unanimous consent, which critics called a sneaky move because it would avoid forcing lawmakers to go on record. It failed, so now there will be an actual roll call vote where Republicans must publicly declare whether they want the Epstein files released. Early numbers suggest dozens of Republicans will vote yes, possibly over 100. So we're heading toward a massive political moment. Full Epstein file disclosure has never been this close, and given what we've seen just from these emails, it could be explosive. Now shifting to a whole different story, the situation with Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. That red carpet moment was insane. A full-on clout-chasing troll ran up on Ariana, grabbed her, and Cynthia Erivo jumped into action instantly, protecting her like a bodyguard. The man is a notorious serial stage rusher who's interrupted concerts for The Weeknd, Chainsmokers, Katy Perry, and even sporting events. He literally posted on Instagram bragging about finally meeting Ariana. Fans are calling for him to be jailed and banned from platforms entirely. People also pointed out Ariana has dealt with extreme trauma before, including the Manchester bombing, and this is the last thing she needs while promoting Wicked. Cynthia Erivo really became the hero of the day. And then swinging into the world of wellness politics, the Make America Healthy Again movement has a new and extremely unexpected folk hero. Elizabeth Holmes. Yes, the Theranos fraudster. Influencers in the Maha space are now painting her as a persecuted innovator, not a scammer. One major figure, Jessica Reed Krause, wrote a glowing redemption arc loading piece that Holmes herself liked from prison. Some Maha influencers claim Holmes was punished for challenging big medicine and that her fraud case needs fresh eyes. Others are even pushing for a potential RFK Jr. or Trump pardon. If you'd told me in 2020 that wellness influencers would become the Elizabeth Holmes fan club, I'd have laughed. But here we are. Then we get to the shutdown. The 43-day government shutdown, the longest in U.S. history, is over. The House passed the bill with Democrats crossing over to vote yes and Republicans crossing over to vote no. Trump signed it and blamed Democrats, saying they extorted the country. Democrats argued Trump used the American people as hostages. During the shutdown, 700,000 federal workers were furloughed, hundreds of thousands more worked without pay, including military, law enforcement, TSA, and air traffic controllers. Thousands of flights were delayed or canceled. SNAP benefits were disrupted. The Trump administration used the shutdown to cut infrastructure funds in blue states, threaten not to pay back pay, and prioritize paying certain agencies in ways experts say were possibly illegal. Meanwhile, Trump traveled, held a $1 million per plate dinner, and hosted a Great Gatsby party the night SNAP funding expired. The shutdown deal only lasts till January, which means another shutdown could be coming. Only about 10% of government spending was actually stabilized long-term, and Democrats are already signaling they may force another shutdown unless ACA subsidies are extended, because without those subsidies, millions will pay hundreds more per month or lose coverage altogether. There's also a controversial measure in the bill that lets senators sue the government for $500,000 if their phone or electronic records were seized without their knowledge. It's clearly a response to the Jack Smith subpoenas of 8 Republican senators during the 2020 election investigation. Mike Johnson already says House Republicans will repeal that section immediately. And then finally, Scott Galloway. He talked about the divide between kids who grow up wealthy and kids who grow up with nothing. The difference in opportunity is staggering. Elite private schools spend $75,000 a year per student. Poor schools spend $8,000 to $10,000. The SAT gap between low-income and middle-income kids is 120 points, but between middle-income and wealthy kids, it's 250 points. He says if we were honest, we'd spot poor kids 370 SAT points just to level the playing field. He spoke about applying to UCLA when admission was 74%, yet he didn't get in. He applied to one school because he couldn't afford anything else. Meanwhile, wealthier families told him to just fly to Michigan and walk into admissions, something completely impossible when you don't have a credit card, experience, money, or confidence. And that's where the conversation ends, on the reality that success in America is not grit alone, but the invisible advantages people rarely acknowledge. And listen, the moment those emails hit the public domain, the internet did not wait. Social media lit up instantly. People were zooming in, screenshotting, forwarding, dissecting every sentence like it was a national emergency. And you already know how this goes. Once the public gets a taste, they start digging deeper. Because what was supposed to be just a handful of emails? Oh no, the conversation turned into, if this is what they released, then what else is out there? But here's where it gets even messier. According to what Democrats on the committee claimed, these emails weren't just casual little check-ins. They stated that the messages show some level of communication between Trump's circle and Epstein's estate in ways that raised eyebrows in Washington. And whether you believe it's serious or not, the reaction was explosive. Suddenly people were asking, well, why now? Why these emails? And why is the timing lining up with everything else happening politically? Because let's keep it real. Timing is everything in D.C. Nothing just magically drops. It drops for a reason. And the moment these emails dropped, the speculation machine went into overdrive. Some folks said it was politically motivated. Others said it was just transparency. And then, of course, the conspiracy theories started flying like confetti at a parade. Meanwhile, Trump's team instantly pushed back. They denied any wrongdoing and said these releases were nothing more than a distraction, political theater. They said the emails don't show anything inappropriate and that this is just another attempt to smear him. And to be fair, that's been a long-running argument from his side, that everything is part of a coordinated attack. But that still didn't stop the avalanche. Commentators were jumping on live streams, podcasts, news panels, TikToks, everything. Everyone had an opinion. Some were connecting dots, others said there are no dots. And then you had the people saying, look, whether you support Trump or not, anything involving Epstein is going to get attention. Because Epstein's name alone, it's like a bomb going off in the political world. It triggers suspicion, paranoia, debate, outrage, all of it. And the craziest part, this doesn't seem to be the end. Lawmakers are now hinting that there might be more material they want to review. They didn't promise anything, but they left the door cracked open. And you know when the door is cracked open in Congress, people are going to start kicking it to see what else falls out. So now everyone's watching. The media, the public, the campaigns, the politicians, waiting to see if this was just round one or if we're about to walk into a whole series of releases that could shake up the political season even more. Because whether these emails end up meaning something big or absolutely nothing at all, one thing is already certain. The conversation is not dying down. In fact, this situation has more eyes on it now than it did 24 hours ago. And in this age, attention has power. Perception has power. Even unanswered questions have power. And this story just created a lot of unanswered questions. And now let's get into the public response, because baby, the internet didn't just react, it erupted. Twitter, Threads, TikTok, Instagram, every platform was on fire. People were breaking down the emails line by line like it was the Zapruder film. You had folks making 40-minute TikTok explainers. You had political commentators doing emergency live streams. And you had memes circulating before half the country even woke up. It was chaos. Some people were saying, see, this is why transparency matters. Others were like, this is exaggerated, they're reaching. And then you had a whole third group, the conspiracy crowd, who turned this into a 38-layer mystery board with strings and pushpins. Folks were drawing circles, highlighting phrases, making theories that were, let's just say, creative. But the wildest part, the divide. Because depending on what side of the political fence you're on, this story looked completely different. One side saw it as a bombshell. The other saw it as a distraction. And once the public gets polarized like that, once the narrative splits in two, it becomes less about the emails themselves and more about what people want them to mean. And while the internet was melting down, the political analysts jumped in too. Every news panel was like, okay, let's slow down and look at what's actually in these emails, because sensationalism spreads faster than facts. They pointed out that yes, these emails came from Epstein's estate, and yes, they involve Trump's circle, but the context still matters. Analysts were reminding everybody this is one piece of a much larger puzzle, and nobody knows what the full puzzle even looks like yet. But that didn't stop the speculation. In fact, the speculation expanded. Because once people realized Congress was willing to release these, even if it was just a few, they started asking the real question. What else is the committee sitting on? That's when the energy shifted. Suddenly, everyone wasn't just talking about the emails that were released, they were talking about the emails that weren't released, the messages the public hasn't seen, the information lawmakers might have, the potential for more disclosures. And that tension, that anticipation, that buzzing silence where everybody's waiting for the next shoe to drop, that's exactly what's fueling this entire story right now. Because when Washington keeps secrets, the public gets suspicious. When Washington releases something, the public gets suspicious. When Washington says nothing, baby, the public gets even more suspicious. It's a lose-lose-lose situation. So now we're sitting in this moment where the facts are limited, the reactions are loud, the theories are wild, and the political stakes are sky high. And the question everyone is whispering, or sometimes shouting, is what happens next? Are more emails coming? Will more material be released? Will this fade out in a week? Or is this just the beginning of something bigger? Right now, nobody knows. And that uncertainty is exactly what's making this situation so explosive.